They often tell you that the universe was born from a command, that in the primordial emptiness, a single powerful voice rang out, and so everything came to be. It is a neat story, perfect and full of authority. But they were wrong. The truth, like all great truths, is far more complex and achingly more beautiful. The universe was not born from power. It was born from the greatest loneliness you could ever imagine. A silence so profound, it yearned to be broken. And the story you are about to hear is not one of omnipotence. It is the story of the most audacious gamble in history, a wager against the void itself, and an ending that will completely change the way you look at the stars in the sky and the way you look at yourself. This is the epic no one has ever told you. So, before we pull back the curtain of time together, let us do one small thing. Pause for just a moment. Tell me, where are you on this globe, and what time is it on your clock? Leave a comment so I know which souls are listening with me in this shared moment, no matter how many thousands of miles separate us, so we know that on this journey into the past, we are not alone. Are you ready? Good. Take a deep breath, because our story begins now. Before time had a name for people to call it, before memory was a concept, and before the stars had a place to anchor themselves and shine, there was nothing. Try to imagine it, not as a dark room, not as a moonless night sky. Imagine an absolute absence. No up, no down, no past, no future. There was only a vast, endless void, an eternal silence, cold and heavy like a bottomless ocean. That was the void. And in the heart of this breathtakingly still ocean, there was a single consciousness, a lone existence, without form, without beginning, without end. We will call him the architect. He was not lonely, because the concept of lonely requires someone else for comparison. He was the very essence of solitude. In the eternity he inhabited, he was a painter without a canvas, a musician with no notes to play, a poet with no words to write. Every grand idea, every magnificent image, every glorious melody was born and died within his mind, with no one to witness, no one to listen. His solitude was not a feeling. It was a law of the nascent universe, a law for which he was the only prisoner. Over eons longer than we could ever count, a yearning began to kindle in the deepest depths of that existence. It was not a passing thought, but a tide, rising slowly and unstoppably. A yearning to share, a yearning to be witnessed, a yearning to hear a sound other than his own silence. It was a quiet but fierce rebellion against eternal stillness. And from that internal storm, from the ache of absolute solitude, the architect decided to do something unprecedented. He decided to paint. Not with a brush, not with colors. He would paint with the very fabric of reality itself. He focused his entire will, compressing eons of silence into a single moment. And then he spoke the first words, not as a command to others, but as a declaration to the void itself, a declaration of war. Let there be light. There was no explosion. There was no sound at all. It was more like a tear, a sweet tear ripping through the black velvet curtain of the void. From a point as small as a pinprick, light poured forth, not a blinding white, but a cascade of golden warmth and gentleness. It spread, not with the speed of an explosion, but like golden honey flowing across a black slate. It did not banish the darkness. It gave the darkness a border, a definition. For the first time in eternity, there was a difference. There was contrast. The architect gazed upon his first masterpiece, and for the first time he felt something other than solitude. It was joy. But he did not realize. In that glorious moment as light was born, something else was unintentionally formed. It was not an entity. It was a consequence. A new law for this young universe. Where there is light, there will be shadow. Where there is sound, there will be silence for comparison. When the first stroke was painted, it cast an indelible shadow, a reminder of the primordial void, an echo of the ancient stillness, an existence that was cold, invisible, but always there. It was the echo, and this specter would haunt every step of his grand creation. In the elation of an artist who had just found his canvas, the architect began his great work. He reached into the expanse, and with his will, he separated the chaotic energies. Let there be a space between to divide. And so, the sky was born. A vast blue dome, an invisible shield protecting the world to come. Then he looked down upon the chaotic mass below, and he commanded it. Let the waters gather in one place, so that dry land may appear. A great movement began. The ground rumbled, shuddering into motion. The primordial oceans roared, retreating, giving way to the rising continents. The first mountains thrust themselves up from the water, proud and jagged, their sharp peaks seeming to want to pierce the very sky that had just been made. Deep valleys were carved into the earth, and the first rivers began their journey to find the sea. It was a symphony of earth and water, a geological dance, and the architect was its conductor. He was drunk on the power of creation, on the joy of seeing his ideas become reality. A world was taking shape, a dream was becoming tangible. Everything was magnificent, everything was just as he willed it. But the new land was still bare, silent. It was a different silence than the void, but it was silence nonetheless. It was missing something, a pulse, a breath. And then the architect whispered to the earth, a gentle whisper full of hope. Sprout, bring forth life. Something miraculous happened. From the dry ground, tiny green shoots began to stir. They pushed aside pebbles and dirt, stretching themselves upward to greet the light. Young grass laid a soft green carpet over the hillsides. The first saplings unfurled their leaves, tentative as if tasting the air for the very first time. Massive forests rose, their roots digging deep into the earth, their canopies spreading to create vast green domes. For the first time, the world breathed. A light breeze rustled through the leaves, creating a soft, whispering sound, the first murmur of nature. And the architect saw it, he heard it, and he knew that it was good. He walked, unseen, through his first forest, touching the rough bark of a tree, feeling the dampness of new moss. His joy was nearly complete, but then he stopped. Amidst a carpet of vibrant green sprouts, there was one tiny leaf just unfurled from its bud, but its edge was already turning a sickly yellow. It was just a small detail, a trivial imperfection in a grand masterpiece. But to an entity accustomed to the absolute, it was a crack in perfection. He looked closer and he realized it was not an accident. It was a rule, to be born, to grow, and then to wither. The echo of silence, that specter of the void, was not just an absence. It had become a principle of decay. It had left its first mark on the very life he had just created. A sense of unease crept into his mind for the first time. His work, however beautiful, carried within it the seeds of its own end. That unease grew as he turned his attention to the night sky. The darkness was no longer a terrifying black, but it was empty. He wanted to fill it with sparkling beauty, with reminders of the light even in the darkness. Let there be luminaries. And then a golden blaze erupted on the horizon, a colossal ball of fire, searing and brilliant. The sun. It brought a glorious day, warming the earth, giving the plants the energy to grow. But as it set, darkness crept back in, bringing with it the cold and the silence. The architect knew the darkness also needed a ruler. From the depths of space, a soft silver glow emerged. The moon, the guardian of the night with its quiet and ethereal beauty. But he was still not satisfied. He wanted more. He swept his hand across the black expanse, and one by one, the stars began to ignite. Billions upon billions of diamonds scattered across an infinite velvet cloth. Some burned fiercely, others twinkled gently. They were whispers of fire, distant hopes. The night sky became a work of art, a map of unexplored worlds. He looked upon his work, the sun ruling the day, the moon and stars guarding the night, a perfect balance. But then the old unease returned. He saw, amidst the glittering dance of the stars, a star that had just flared into existence, now sputtering out, becoming a black fleck in the cosmos. He saw a fiery meteor crash into a distant planet, leaving a giant scar. The echo was not just on Earth. It was everywhere. It was the law of destruction, running parallel to the law of creation. The beauty of his work was now forever paired with a quiet sorrow. Was a finite beauty truly beautiful, or was it just a sweet lie before everything returned to dust? The architect looked down at the silent oceans and the empty skies. They were beautiful, but they lacked movement. They lacked a distinct character. He decided it was time to fill them with song. Let the seas teem with life. Let the skies echo with song. At his command, the abyssal depths of the ocean began to stir. An explosion of life took place. Colossal creatures, the leviathans of the dawn, glided through the deep water, their shadows covering entire mountain ranges below. Shimmering schools of fish moved as one, like shifting pieces of silver. Luminous jellyfish pulsed like living lanterns, illuminating the darkest corners of the sea. Coral began to grow, painting the ocean floor with colors never before seen. The ocean had found its voice, a symphony of movement and color. But it was not just the sea that awoke. High above, the skies burst into motion. The first eagles spread their powerful wings, soaring high, their cries echoing across the valleys. Flocks of tiny sparrows zipped through the tree branches, moving with the wind like a gentle melody. The sky was no longer empty. It had become a stage for the dance of wind and wing. And then, on the land, the final explosion of animal life occurred. Let the land bring forth creatures of every kind. Mighty lions stretched and let out their first roars, a sound that shook the forests. Vast, towering elephants took their first steps, their footfalls shaking the ground. Graceful deer leaped through the woodlands, and swift rabbits darted between tall grasses. Beneath them, armies of ants marched with purpose. Lizards basked in the sun, and colorful butterflies danced on the breeze. The world had become vibrant, loud, chaotic, and beautiful. The architect walked among the creatures. He saw the joy in the eyes of a baby monkey at play, the majesty in the stance of a great stag. This was a complete symphony. But when he listened more closely, he began to hear discordant notes. He saw the proud eagle he had just created diving down, its talons sinking into a struggling fish. He saw the mighty lion stalking a gazelle that was trembling with fear. He saw that this life was feeding on other life through death. The echo was no longer a passive decay. It was now an active principle, a ruthless law of survival. This beauty was built on pain. This life was paid for with other life. The conflict had reached its peak. Is a symphony written with screams still a beautiful symphony? Despair. It was an emotion the architect had never known, but now it overwhelmed him. He looked at his creation, a world that was magnificent yet full of suffering, a beauty woven from the threads of life and death. The echo had won. It had turned his work into a cruel loop. The perfection he had craved was now forever out of reach. A terrifying thought entered his mind: to erase it all, to return everything to the void, to the primordial stillness where there was no pain, no loss. It would take but a thought, a single command, and it would all vanish as if it had never been. He raised his hand, ready to end his flawed dream. But then he stopped. He saw a tiny wildflower, resiliently growing from a crack in a rock. He saw two swans, their necks entwined on a placid lake. He saw beauty, not the beauty of perfection, but the beauty of struggle, of existence in spite of everything. And in that moment of decision, an idea even more audacious than creating the universe entered his mind. A final gamble. He would not retreat. He would not destroy. He would wager everything on one final creation. He knelt down. He gathered a handful of common dust, the very material that had witnessed both life and death. He mixed it with water from a stream, and then he let a single one of his own tears fall into it, a tear of doubt and of hope. And with the hands of his consciousness, he began to sculpt. Carefully, meticulously, he crafted every detail. A perfect form, yet still lifeless, still cold. It was the masterpiece born from despair, a wager against fate. He would call them the Sentinels. The architect looked down at the lifeless form before him. He could grant it life, just as he had granted it to all the other creatures. One breath, and it would stand up, move, become another part of the cycle. But he knew that was not enough. To grant it mere life would be to condemn it to suffer the law of the echo without any ability to fight back. His gamble required something more, something that could change the entire game. So he did not breathe an ordinary breath into it. He focused the essence of himself, not his power, not his eternity, but the most precious thing he possessed, his consciousness. He breathed into the clay form a piece of his own spirit, the breath of choice. In that instant, the eyes of the form opened, but in those eyes was not just the light of life. There was also a spark of awareness, of curiosity, of confusion, and the potential for both joy and sorrow. The architect had not created a perfect puppet. He had created a free being. He gave them the capacity to love, and with it, the pain of loss. He gave them the capacity to create, and with it, the capacity to destroy. He gave them hope, and with it, the capacity for despair. He had given them the greatest and most terrifying gift of all, free will. He did not stand from on high and proclaim, "Rule over the world." He knelt down, eye to eye with his first creation, and whispered, not the words of a king, but of a father. "This world is not perfect," he said, his voice full of tenderness. "The echo will always be there. Leaves will wither, stars will die, and sorrow is part of the beauty. I cannot give you a world without shadows, but I can give you a greater gift, the ability to light your own candle. I give you the choice to continue the story, the ability to find meaning in what is finite, the ability to love even knowing that one day you must part. You are not my final product. You are a new beginning." The architect took a step back. He did not rest from exhaustion. He stepped back in trust. He was no longer the only artist in his universe. He had passed on the paintbrush. The first smile, the first tear, the first wrong decision, the first selfless act, all now belonged to the Sentinels. They looked at the world around them, a world both beautiful and terrifying. They looked at their own hands, realizing the power to build and the power to break. The creation of the architect was complete, but the journey of creation by humanity had only just begun. He did not disappear. He became the silent observer, the first audience member to a grand play for which he had only written the opening act. He watched over his legacy, not with control, but with a trembling hope, a hope that the gift of choice would be used to write chapters more glorious than anything he could have ever imagined. Their history, our history, from that moment on had begun to be written. And that is the true story of the dawn. A story not of absolute power, but of a loving gamble. The legacy. The architect left behind was not a perfect world, but the choice to make an imperfect world worth living in. Every great work of art, every timeless poem, every act of love, every sacrifice, these are all the next strokes in the painting that the Sentinels are completing together. And that is our legacy as well. So I ask you, after hearing this all, what was the greatest gift the architect gave to the Sentinels? Was it hope to face the darkness, or was it the choice to define their own destiny between the light and the echo? Your answer says a great deal about how you see this world. Leave your thoughts in the comments because your story, your choice, is also a part of this grand legacy. And if you wish to join us in discovering more forgotten myths, more stories that can change how we see our history and ourselves, then journey with our channel. Be sure to subscribe and ring the bell so you do not miss a single chapter in the great chronicle of humanity that we are rewriting together. Thank you for listening.